On today's Rebel's Edge, oil is rallying on renewed tensions in the Middle East. In Fantastic Futures, we'll talk about what the smart money is betting the Fed will do in the upcoming September meeting. An open door surging on an anticipated rate cut, the stock up over 6% just before we went live. Will that continue, and how much will the Fed's first rate cut really impact the real estate market? We're going to cover all of that and more on today's Rebel's Edge.
Here we go again. It's the Rebel's Edge. I got my man, Mark Lopresti, the CEO of Market Rebellion, does a fantastic job. And we got a lot to cover, man. I think we got to jump into it right away. Is that cool by you?
Let's do it, Pete.
All right, so let's start off with the macro minute, and we only need a minute for this. Last week, everything was pointing towards Jackson Hole. What's Powell going to say? What are some of the other folks from the Fed going to say potentially? And we certainly did get delivered on that. You look on Friday, we were up nearly 500 points on the Dow. NASDAQ was running, S&P was running. They were all moving to the upside. So that was really great. What this week? I'm going to say this. There is one stock that is going to be a monstrous catalyst as we get into this week. It's Wednesday, and it's NVIDIA, and that's going to be very meaningful. I think that's my macro minute, even though it's just one stock.
Yeah, well, listen, Pete, it's definitely all about indicators for what the Fed's going to do, right? The CME right now pricing in a 35 basis point odds of what he's going to do in September. Interesting, kind of splitting the difference between a quarter basis point and 50 basis points. I think the only numbers that are going to matter this week, I know we got Case-Shiller home price coming out. We got a lot of important earnings, including NVIDIA, Best Buy reporting on Thursday. We got PCE on Friday, Fed's preferred inflation gauge. But, man, it's all about jobs, jobs, jobs. We've got that most important September jobs report coming out 2 weeks from now. That's what JPOW is going to be focused on most closely in determining whether we go 25, 35, or 50. I don't think there's any chance of 50. It signals that something's really wrong, and that ain't the message he wants to deliver.
I'd even be a little surprised at 35. But anyway, I digress.
I'm with you.
All right, so for the fantastic future, I'm going to go to energy. I'm not going to oil. I'm going right back to uranium. It's something I've been talking about for a really long time, about all of the demands, Mark, everything that's going on out there. How do we possibly keep up? We can't keep up right now, and we're just at the beginning of this whole process with AI and data centers getting bigger, badder, and all the rest of it. So I think uranium, and by the way, it has already been at multi-year highs throughout this year, and it's something I think that we should be paying attention to. Anytime it kind of eases back, I think it's time to start looking once again at Cameco and some of the other names that are out there that are involved here, because this is something that's going to be big, and it will be building over years, not just weeks or months.
Yeah, this is a long-term trade. I cannot agree more violently or aggressively with you about the uranium play. I also like nuclear, particularly the small micro-nuclear companies that are developing solutions. I'll give you two really quick data points, Pete, and then we'll go into the first stock. We had the head of ERCOT. That is the grid in Texas. We do not have a unified energy grid in this country. That comes as a surprise to many people. And he said, based on what the anticipated demand for data centers alone in Texas, tax favorable state, very pro-business, we know what's going on there, is anticipated in 5 years to be 75% of what the current demand level is right now. That's 75% increase in just 5 years, just from data centers. And the other interesting data point we got last week, the head of the IEA on Friday saying that the anticipated in that same 5-year global energy demand increase would be the equivalent of 1 year of Japan's total energy demand. Where the heck is all that power going to come from? You got to be bullish on these energy names. Long-term trade, folks.
Absolutely. I agree with you. All right, now let's kick it off with some of those individual names that we always like to get to. We've got 4 of them, like we always do. PDD is number 1. So we're talking about retail, online retail out of China. It seemed like everything looked pretty dang impressive, Mark, but there is one little stat within this whole thing. They had a mixed report. The revenue, it was only up 86%, that's all, and yet that wasn't even enough, as it turns out. They were slowing, supposedly, on this as well. The marketing and the transaction That's all going in a great way, in the right, proper way. Expenses, though, you take a look at the expenses, that's where the problems do step up. And then suddenly you look at that, that's up 48%, those costs. So when I look at this one, but here's the other crazy part. When you really dig deep into PDD, you've got free cash flow. It's only 95 billion. Cash to debt, 231 billion. So they do have some growth, Mark, but I guess that number, the number we were looking at for expenses, kind of spooked people because stock's down about 30%. I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it may be I am a little bit more sanguine when it comes to these Chinese names for a whole host of reasons we won't get into. I think the other undercurrent that's not been mentioned in conjunction with this story is there is continued weakness in the Chinese consumer, especially when it comes to discretionary retail. Those folks are spending money on what they need, not necessarily what they want, and that's an evolving story. So I think any of these Chinese retail names, they sell globally, of course, but a lot of the core strength comes from the domestic retail, and that is a weak area in the Chinese economy right now.
All right, sticking with that, by the way, we're going to go to the EV space. We're going to go to Xping. And this one's pretty interesting, Mark. It's actually up about 9%. Why is that? Well, when the CEO decides, the chairman and CEO decide that they want to be a buyer of shares and 1 million shares, that tends to really move stocks pretty good. We were talking about Clove not too terribly long ago. That's another one where insider, the chair, and the CEO buying shares. So this one is pretty interesting. Stock's up about 9%. I actually don't think it's up enough. I think that when you start seeing somebody who's an insider starting to buy and finishes up by saying, by the way, I'm not done yet, I plan on buying more. I don't know. I don't think this thing is topped out at 9% higher. I think that there's an opportunity there. I'm going to have to go back and look. Is there some options going on or anything like that? Because I think this one has got a little bit more upside than a lot of people are thinking. And it's not just a 9% move.
Yeah, well, you got a question, though, Pete, whether or not this is now priced in, right? When the guy says, I'm not done. His stake is almost 19% right now. It's a massive position. I love when CEOs back up the truck and get behind the plan that they're not only laying out, they're running, but I would be surprised if this thing has that much more room to run. I'll tell you what, the next time we get invited to host a celebrity Texas Hold'em tournament like we did at the Money Show 2 weeks ago, I'd like this guy to be playing because I want him to tell me, yeah, I'm not done. I'm not done. I'll check raise you all day long, brother.
I like that. I'm with you on that. All right, number 3, we've got Open Door Tech. Now, if you're in real estate and you all of a sudden have this idea that, well, it sure sounds like Chair Powell and the Fed has got this thing all wrapped up and they're going to give us a cut in September, that's not a bad thing. And that is one of the segments of the market that really started to rip. Open Door Tech really started to rip. Today, it's up another 3.5%. It's been running pretty nicely, Mark. This is the music to the ears of the folks that are in this particular space. And it is something that a lot of people have been waiting for. Now, that all being said, we've already seen, when you look at real estate, we've already seen mortgages come down significantly. We're at the lowest levels we've been in like 16 months or something like that. So the combination of that and obviously the Fed and that what they're in, basically telling us they're going to do, this is a name that's probably got a little more room behind it because I think we start seeing a few more transactions because that definitely, when those rates were high, those transactions were low. And now that we're getting a little bit better, maybe we're going to see those transactions start to go back up.
Well, and listen, I'm loving the bull bear thing we got going on today, Pete. We usually agree on most things, but today we got a few that we've got some market divergence, as we say in trading.
It's all good.
I'm not with you on this one. I mean, look, what is 35 basis points? Assuming we get 35, what does it do, right? I mean, yeah, we're down from that 7.7 average. Definitely a good thing, but you still have existing home turnover at a historic low, right? Since we've been tracking that, we have not seen this level of no activity, right? In terms of existing homes, anything that's going to come is going to come from the new home sales. We can't make enough to keep up with the demand. And at the end of the day, 25 or 35 basis points ain't going to move the needle more than what on a monthly mortgage, right? On average, somebody did the math. I forget exactly what it was, but we're talking like 175 to 125 bucks on average. Is that going to be enough to suddenly open the floodgates to the real estate market? I say no. I actually think that what's going to happen is sellers, in anticipation of that floodgate opening that I don't see happening with this small of a cut, they're going to raise prices, okay? Like big time raise prices, and that's going to put further pressure on what has already been a broken real estate market in this country. So I'm taking the bear case on this one, Pete.
Well, I want to just remind you one thing, though. When you look at Open Door, take a look. It's got about a 12 to 14% short interest, which means maybe a short squeeze if this thing starts to run a little bit. The run might actually go a little further than either of us might think. Guardian Health. Oh, go ahead.
Certainly, before you pass that one, Pete, we got to take a little victory lap for our friends in the pit, right? We did have on the 19th of this month some rather significant bullish call buying activity in this name. They bought 5,000 of the August 23 at a 2 handle. So if you got that one, if you got in on it, kudos to you. That's part of why we do at Market Rebellion. I say take those profits. Pete might say take some of the profit, play with the house's money. We'll see who's right.
Take at least a chunk off, but make sure that you're always disciplined. That's what we talk about all the time to our own guys and anybody else. It's all about discipline and taking some off at least, if not all, to your point. Right. Guardian Health. This one's pretty interesting, Mark. This is one of those where it's a diagnostics company. They've got a lot of growth. They've got a lot of very positive things. I'm going to skip over the positive things and go right to the negative because the stock is down about 11% today or something close to that. Here's the problem that I see here. They don't make money. At some point, when you're a company that's a public company, at some point, you need to start making money. These guys are losing about $4 a share. That's not a very good number. It's actually a fairly significant number. So profitability, when you've got sales, that's great. I love it. I want to see those sales that are really strong. But you've got to show me that at some point in your career, you're going to make money in this company. And so far, not so good. So for that reason, I sound like Shark Team. And for that reason, I'm out.
I'm out. Well, I'm going to take it even further than that, and I'll use a line from our other friend, Kevin O'Leary, and say that they're dead to me. I'm not just out. They're dead to me. Look, managed care as a sector, as we know, has performed very poorly this year. We started out in the first quarter with earnings and comments about we didn't anticipate the continued or the resurgence in demand for optional outpatient care services, all of the backlog of stuff that people decided, well, I'm going to wait until COVID's over to go and get my toe checked or whatever the hell it is. I still don't understand how these CEOs and their boards manage to completely misdiagnose, if you'll excuse the dad joke, what that demand would be. I don't like the sector. And look, there's one very simple reason why the stock is plunging the way it's doing. They're doing an ATM. And folks, in this industry, that doesn't mean a cash machine, right? And although it can be in a generation perspective, that means an at-the-money offering. An at-the-money offering means that their banker, in this case, it's our friends over at Jefferies, are putting a significant block, $400 million worth of stock into the market at the money. That means the price that the stock is at when you want to buy it is the price you're going to get. ATM offerings are notorious for bringing stock prices down. You got that plus an industry that's already struggling to keep up with their anticipated cost structure because of those outpatient services, and you got a recipe for disaster. As I said, as our friend KO, I call him KO. You're dead to me, Guardian Health.
Mark, we got some fun sports stuff we can kick around a little bit here. I know you're a baseball guy, right?
We do. Well, listen, there's a question I've been dying to ask you, okay? Yeah. And I am a baseball guy. I enjoy it. We love baseball. John isn't not as much of a baseball fan. It's too slow for his blood. But what do you think in terms of the MVP lineup this year? I know you love Ohtani. We talk about him a lot on the show, but you got to think some competition from the judge. What do you think? How does that play out?
I am so convinced right now that it's going to be Ohtani, but it could be Judge. It still could be. He's a member. He just hit his 50th and his 51st home run. And by the way, absolutely just crushing that ball. It's unbelievable. By the way, they were back to back. It's unreal. This guy had 63. He's on pace for 63 home runs. He had 62 back in 2022. I mean, this is a guy who knows a little something about hitting the ball and does an absolutely magnificent job year after year after year. He's somewhere in the mix of the top group. It's incredible how good this guy is, how big he is, how far he hits the ball, all of it. But then you go over and you look over at Shohei Ohtani. Now, this guy is really special, Mark. He was a pitcher. He's going to be a pitcher again. He was just pitching the other day, just trying to see how things are going with his elbow. But in the meantime, well, he's a member of the 40-40 club. That means he's got 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases. Now, the reason that's so amazing, only 5 other guys have done it. But the reason it's so amazing is when you think about it, you've got to have the athleticism and the speed and all the things that go into stealing a base, right? I mean, I don't think Aaron Judge steals a lot of bases, in other words, but he's a big athletic guy, but probably not gifted enough to be able to do that the way Ohtani is. Ohtani, by the way, is not that much smaller. He's just athletic. He's incredible. Everything he's been able to do, it's been really, really impressive. He is right now in line to potentially be the first guy ever to be the 50-50 club. Wow. Now, that could be pretty amazing. You know, he's a 6'4", 225-pound guy. I think Judge is 6'7", maybe even 6'8", but he's a big man, weighs about 285 pounds. I was at a game a couple of years ago, watched him, and he's just a physical specimen. But for me, the MVP is a guy who's just doing it in every part on the field, and stealing bases, pretty impressive. Hitting home runs, really impressive. At some point, he's going to be back pitching again. That's even more impressive.
Yeah, my money's on Ohtani for sure. And in the last couple of minutes we got left, let's talk a little college football. FSU, man. Listen, you know, your second home state, my second home state, Florida. We are FSU fans. But what the heck happened?
Well, they went in as the number 10 team in the country, and they're still ticked off about last year being left out. I am not, because I actually believed in having them left out. When you lose your quarterback, you have lost a huge piece of your football team. So they didn't get themselves into the national championship hunt. Now there's 12 teams. I'll tell you what, they were number 10. They won't be number 10 the next time these rankings come out. And I don't know how far they'll slip. This was a close game with Georgia Tech. It probably all depends on, is Georgia Tech really that good? Or did Florida State kind of lay an egg? And they've got a new quarterback, a guy who's been playing for about 8 years of college, literally. I mean, this guy has been everywhere from Clemson to Oregon State, and now he's down at Florida State. I don't know how some of these guys, Mark, are going into the NFL at 25 years old. I mean, it's absolutely incredible.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, and right? Right. That's the reason they were able to do it. You're exactly right.
That's
but
right.
I think the amazing thing is that they didn't just beat up on them. Now, this is a close game. It was settled by a field goal at the end of the game in Dublin, in Ireland, and fascinating to see how much they love American football over there. I absolutely think it's the coolest thing. But when a team like Georgia Tech goes up against Florida State and puts up almost 200 yards running on them, it shows me who's more physical and who really wants it. And it was Georgia Tech. And if that defense is as bad the rest of the year as they looked against Georgia Tech, they might not even be able to get themselves into the top end of the ACC for Florida State. Time will tell. This is just one game, but this was a pretty critical game for them, and that's going to slide them down, and they're not going to be in that top 12.
Hard to disagree, Pete. Well, listen, folks, thank you very much for joining us for another Rebels Edge. You know, we do this show Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. You never know who you're going to get. You might get Pete and John. You might get me and Pete. You might get me and John. Pete and I do a pretty good job with this. There's a reason why Liz Clayman likes to have us on as a dynamic duo. We were on, for those of you that didn't watch it, I know you all did, 3 o'clock Eastern on Thursday. Unbelievable. We were the floor show, the entire A block on the Clayman Countdown. Thank you so much. Big shout out to Liz for having us back on. Folks, don't miss tuning into the Rebels Edge. I also want you to check out, if you're not already subscribed, to the Rebels Setup. That's our 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. pre-market show hosted by the very talented Steve Kalasian. You can sign up for that on our marketrebellion.com website. You can also sign up for the Rebel Roundup. That's our daily newsletter that is edited by the incredibly talented Justin Nugent. And the last shameless plug of the day, Pete, you know I got to do this because our new commercials are running today for the first time on CNBC and Fox. That's the Rebel Mastermind, folks. That is our full live trading day event. First time this has ever been done. That's October 11th in Aventura, Florida. The lineup is incredible. We've got only 100 tickets. The VIP tickets, Pete, are almost all sold out. They're selling faster than the regular tickets because it's an incredible package, folks. If you have any interest at all in that, click on one of those marketing emails that you probably received from us, because I'm pushing this thing. I want to have this sold out because people are going to get an education in one day like they've never gotten before. Plus, they're going to get to hang out with us, have some drinks, hang out with our partner, Grant Cardone, some other luminaries we've got coming. It is a can't miss event. Pete,
Awesome.
I'll let you sign it off.
Last thing I'll say is I'll be on Schwab Network today at 1:00. So that's going to be fun too. I always love, they are so professional. They truly are. They do a really magnificent job. I give them all the credit in the world. It's fun to go over there. So I'll be over there. I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to the rest of this week. I'll tell you what, Rebels Edge, we're excited. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m.